Here's a guitar, unstrung, but that's fine. So you can see it, I have to sort of play it a bit unnaturally. It sits lower than this. Yeah, I have sort of an itching spell in my head. And then me attacked by a certain kind of insult that makes you really wonder what the person's doing. But like you can't really not react to it. It's kind of like blasphemy. Someone just starts to say that like, I don't know, like the moon isn't really like that far away, or and start insisting upon it and start saying, progressively, like, just start stacking up the absurdities. At some point, you feel like you just can't take it anymore. And you have to like say something, right? Well, it's kind of similar to that. Why I have to keep scratching my head, and it should all be on record because what happens in spirits. You end up when it's recording. Yeah, the thing is, they're also kind of corrupted. I won't talk too much about spirits, but they're not the ones who attack. It's just like a wild animal of some kind. They're not really supposed to. Animals are not supposed to sort of attack randomly. They just like see a human being and start charging them. That's more of a spirit than an animal who will do that. Animals usually are pretty sensitive to pain and sort of like consequences for careless actions. Like to walk around without like I don't know like with some sort of wound as an animal is not desirable at all. Like it's definitely pretty difficult stuff to overcome. So most animals will sort of get into fights they think are like important. It's not that important to sort of see something unfamiliar and charge it. However, if you start to move in a certain unwanted direction, they just have to decide I'm going to act now or act later. And many of them decide to act by making a sound, or just sort of to change. Like if light is an important topic, and it just seems like the your heart sees and sees all sorts of colors via the vehicle of light, and you can just sort of see that by moving forward something just seems to change. It could be something you're hearing, something you're seeing, but it just seems like a animal can just start throwing off like a certain kind of like alarm or alert, or like a sort of complicated sense that you don't feel too well. Like you wish you were elsewhere. You may have something that you have to do, like, flee a civil war. There's someone I know who was who was caught, while we're in Ghana by a civil war in Sierra Leone. I won't mention his name. He's not really going to factor very much in my future. But yes, he told me stories. He came to stay with us, and he told me stories about, trying to like cross, that or someone else who's also not really like worth a mention of name. But like he told me I had to like cross this, forest reserve, or cross this, undeveloped, part of land. And as for land development, you can sort of see an artist should be allowed to do that. Should be allowed to sort of look at a horizon, like a horizontal circle, of like land, and think, I can turn this into a place that everyone's welcome. Human beings can, use it to, penetrate further distances, by ground, you just up to like birds who do sort of do those sort of distances. Human beings do those ones too. You can say a horse does. You can say a human being does. Or they say run the human being. I don't know if you can hear me because it's at least hear me as well as I want to be heard, because half the sound I'm hearing right now is like the rasp of like nails on my on the skin of my head. I had a haircut recently. I can tell my hair isn't in the state it's not all the time. I got a haircut recently, and it's helping somewhat with what I have to do there. But Anyway, so I also have it sitting back, so it's not quite as close to the microphone as it could be. That does, impact the sound quality of what I do. Yeah, some people are changing the volume settings. You know, on my hardware. They claim to be my father. Or daddy. And it's just not really quite what my intuition is telling me. Intuition can be wrong. Intuition might be even a strong way to describe like a gut feeling, but yeah, like, it could change on the conversation. I'd have to admit to having a correction. I wish that was something different. I wish being corrected with information you didn't have, wasn't such a laughing matter for the audience. The audience just seems to, the sort of spiritual audience that, dogs or steps or where you go. It's just coming down a bit. You can see I don't have to use two hands too much. They usually do ones like, contradict you by making you, itch more and itch with both hands. So, like your ability to predict things, is impacted. But let's see, they really insist I use my left hand. So anyway, where was I going with this? Well, I guess I have a song to sing, and if I have to keep scratching my head all the way through this, then you should be interested in, like. Let's see, how long have I been here for? Wow, 13 to 14. Let's see, yeah, you also have to excuse if shit really bothers you. That you have to do, because, you know, what I simply must do to get to the next step of my life. The steps are just, second fractions away. Or seconds away. I mean, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be in pretty big trouble. Yeah, it's just important that I help my circulatory system out. With my skeletal system, we all need each other's help, This is sort of how I help myself, I had someone here who was helping me itch, so just let me know where to go. They loved me the right way. That was a powerful, magic, and mathematics. Really. I'm trying to make it more of a mathematic, a magic, because it just seems like love is inspiring, and you can be inspired by love to say or do things, and I don't know. I also am sort of concerned about the volume. Usually I record this in two places. I record this on, the Audacity, and I also record it on, you know, this, QuickTime player, which takes a video. And if the volume isn't loud enough, then it's like I did this all in vain. However, if I don't sit back from time to time, like, I'm kind of uncomfortable. Yeah, I mean, I close the windows, trying to increase the heat of the room, so I'm sweating more. Sweating would actually help me here. I've been sort of dealing with a couple of health troubles, over the course of the past couple of days. You may have heard that the spirits orchestrated a shipport Conte, for us, I feel like that we're being served by this somehow. I keep being told by, those ahead of me on the path, like my ancestors and my fathers, some are in heaven, some are, here on the ground, on earth, crushing soil, as I say. And yeah, they say that in the end, you can be telling them, thanks, for, doing all the things that, you did against me, because it is such a windfall of profit and relief that what passed, came to pass if you're on the side of justice and Islam. Of course, Islam gets a bad rap because there are all sorts of people who decide to act in the name of Islam. And someone tells you that this is what, someone strange looking says, I'm actually from, Baku, Azerbaijan, and, you're like, oh, what are people there like? And they sort of tell you all sorts of complete untrue things. From that point onwards, you assume, you have a exclusive experience of a rare person, and a rare kind of person, I should say, and you've been educated, you've been enlightened, perhaps, about the nature of people there, and what goes on in a different part of the world, and you're a little bit more worldly, through this rare meeting with a person you perhaps get to meet later on, as a part of your job, maybe, or a customer that comes to your workplace, or if I met a colleague, or maybe you shop at a new location and this person, you've struck up a conversation with, has decided to share a little bit more about who he is with you, but he's a liar. Well, that's sort of what happens with a lot of people who, didn't know what Islam was. You might have met someone from the region of the world where they claim to speak more Arabic than anyone else. If you really understood Arabic and how simple it is to speak Arabic, you'd be confused, as to why any one person would want to, claim the language for themselves. Most languages are the same way. But Arabic specifically is not what you hear people, saying out here. It's supposed to be just the sound of the word and how you feel about the word. So the idea of Hassan is that he's supposed to come and teach about Arabic. So I'm the Arabic teacher, but of course, if you ask me to turn on the television channel, playing in that part of the world, I wouldn't be able to follow what's going on at all. It really sounds like Arabic to me. It sounds something completely different. I mean, I hear a lot of Quran recital, going on TV, sets around this place. There's a specific channel that's Turkish, Baina or something like that, and every once in a while they have some scheduled programming, or some sort of interstitial programming. That's a bit more accurate, where they play, this scrolling page of Quran. It's all digitally created, so it's not like you see the variation in the background. It's just to me this beautiful Arabic handwriting and a white background. And you just see it scrolling all the way, to the top, or you just see it scrolling through, your screen, heading upwards, and they have this person reciting it. he was doing a pretty terrible job. You don't particularly care to hear much of it. And the idea you just sort of leave it on as some sort of ventilator in your room or something to give the person a sense that that's your politics, that's your creed, that's your persuasion, that's your mode of entertainment or relaxation, or that's even your health care, and it just sort of puts a certain kind of vibe immediately, in people's minds. Barack Obama talked about the minarets, in Indonesia, which would play, on speakers, loud prayer calls, and it gives a certain kind of feel to a location. Well, that sort of turns the location into hell immediately. Like, that's hell. That's not anything like heaven or paradise, or even purgatory for that matter. So yeah, you can see a little bit of what I plan to talk about. Well, actually, I'm not doing a full screen record. I'm just doing a movie recording, as they call it on QuickTime, so you can't see what I'm about to talk about. I'll read it out right now. Tech landscape, markets in color and fashion and art. But to go back to what I was saying, you're not really supposed to do that. You're not supposed to blare out these curses to evil spirits, all over. It basically upsets the good spirits or good evil spirits, because evil is not necessarily a bad thing. Everything can be high quality or low quality, and if it's high quality, you can appreciate the details thereof. If it seems like a high quality thing can sort of chase away, a appreciator, I think it's actually an important idea, It seems like a high quality thing can chase away an appreciator. Yes, that's not the case. Like, every high quality item, accepts, Allah as his father, or, her father, because that's how you become high quality, through the guidance of Allah, who has, if you've been reading my content recently, who has been there for a lot of people as a guide of many different kinds of, believers, exactly. Believers is a good way to put it, yes. Out of situations too varied, to try and put into categories, And yeah, his favorite son, and that means several things. One, our relationship is pretty, close. Two, mostly how I mean it today, we've run into each other quite a lot. you know, Many people want to, have the relationship I have with him, as even believers who, you can sort of exclude in this particular speaking, those who will never get this. But there are plenty of people who I talk to, regularly. I mean, in this way, I used to talk to Jules Casablancas a little bit more often than I do now, but he's around. Yeah, he's an important part of this effort to get me out of the situation. And, in the way in which getting me out of the situation includes, the liberation of all sorts of, beings, who are, perhaps in jails, unable to aid us, or, perhaps, on the fence and need, specific, victories, that we win to, turn them around and have them beg for mercy and accept our jails and punishments. We're talking mostly spirit realm at this point, but there are some people, who allow themselves to be controlled by spirits who, like animals, for example. So I'm trying to basically, move out of the realm of the typical adversary, like some sort of evil boss or corporation. They're all trapped, they're all prisoners in these jails we call it the corporation. I mean, if you just imagine, he said it's fine. Joe Jebbia, I believe, it was an Airbnb CEO, our executive officer, and I think on his X, or formerly Twitter, profile page, his bio just says Airbnb. So you can just sort of see that, for those who don't get the joke or get the hints, he is sort of sick of it, and for those who enjoy this sort of sadistic pursuits of unidirectional concern, a person becomes, Airbnb entirely. If you look at Y Combinator, you know, startup school material, it suggests that you become similarly. Like you're supposed to like live, breathe, eat, and sleep your company. And if you're not prepared to do that, don't join. And a lot of people just think, okay, well, you're giving me $500,000. I suppose I should consider that motivation enough. It won't be motivation enough. Suppose you okay. Not only that, but I'm also passionate about my product. It won't be motivation enough. Suppose I have to. They talk a number of stories. And one is that unless you feel like you have generally no other option, like you have to sort of assume that you're gonna like leave school behind, you're gonna leave your job behind, you're gonna do nothing but this thing, right? Well, then yeah, that's maybe a third of the story. The 2/3 are well a combination of things that I'll mention. Of course, some things that I can mention because I haven't been through this process in a very long time. But it just seems like you think, okay, like this is like a good time to like drill down and like do one thing, with all the focus I can bring to bear on it. Like this is like my great challenge, to be, a kind of athlete of business. I'm some sort of Olympic athlete of business. I've been training for like, a particular challenge, and I think I'm ready to go forth and give it my all. No, you're not ready. If it just seems like you've been asked to do this, and you find yourself in the position that you need to be doing this in your life, that's pretty much the 23rd, the 2/3 you're looking for, like, yeah. So say going all out on business being just that, your company equals wrong from almost all. Right. So in this way, yeah, the itching's coming down, but understand that if you've been itching for but in this case, almost 30 minutes. Like something obviously is attacking you. Like that's kind of animal. That's some kind of animal's attacking you. It's not so much that like, I mean, a 30-minute attack of itching could be considered like a disease in the future. They can sort of address with maybe some sort of creams or they try to, but it's just hard to get these things to leave you alone. Because until they understand that like. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pause this. Not really pause. I'm gonna have to sort of use a comb I keep, for emergencies to scratch my back. Yeah, this is a comb I keep for scratching my head or scratching my back. I don't use it mostly. I mean, if I'm allowed to even grow enough hair to need a comb, which they don't even let me do really, just keeps on saying, hey, the barber's coming by this week, or this weekend, or this Monday, or what have you, and we like a haircut, and that's sort of code for get one. And yeah, I mean, I haven't had a need for this comb in a very long time. Like I just like about a year. And I would like to grow my hair out, but I just sort of know that while I'm in this sort of location, something else like vain, in the best sense of the word, vain is like keeping your hair away a certain way, is, well, many luxury are just sort of what a human being requires, right? Almost all of them are. Like luxury, like let's say a servant is not really called a luxury. Like you need a servant at a certain point in your life because you're running a certain kind of business and needs more than one person to run it. I have servants, doing things for me like at distances, many, many, many. But I should have one with me right now, like who can like help me with like the process of of healing from this attack. But anyway. So yeah, the last thing I was just saying is that you don't want to do all in the business, but also I was just sort of talking generally about X profiles and that like he's sick of it, I think it's Sam Altman who has his profile saying AI's all right, I guess. So it's your way of protesting. They probably even encourage you to find furtive ways to talk about your ailments, your complaints, your situation. Sam Altman says that's correct. He just wants people to know that he's on both sides of the situation. It's great. It's not that great. It's exactly. And yeah, he could use a different job. And like I said, these places are all jails. For different sorts of people. So that's what I mean by jail. It doesn't have to be physical and a certain kind of like bars and high windows, but functionally you can't leave. And people can visit you and expect a performance, of you, however they like. I saw a girl who's recently managed to book some sort of she's been working since she was 11, and this is like, why doesn't she have any boyfriends you've heard of, and or just constant like that. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? Like, they make me itch my whole body. Like the whole my whole way is sort of up for attack. They're trying to include in this video. I mean, mostly I don't mind, but I do want to attend to what it's going to be something I have to sort of be a bit more. I don't know. I'm a boy, right? So I'm supposed to handle attacks like this on behalf of all YouTubers and stuff. Once I clear the path, you can sort of follow and maybe talk about what I've talked about and that kind of stuff. But it does involve certain amounts of explicit, and certain amounts of intimacy and all that. On both our parts. So you're not used to someone scratching the whole of their body on video, which most people won't have been seeing. I'm a president of many countries. I preside, right? So I reside and preside. So in this way, what can I say? We're getting to 40 minutes of this crap, and I can't seem to drop it. Often I might just simply, apply heat, and it sort of helps, but I don't know. It's pretty absurd that this is lasting this long, and I've been kind of worried that my life is going backwards as opposed to forwards, And the landscape's been impossible to predict, and it hasn't even really come up as a desire to be able to predict or be able to Alright. So back to the three things I want to talk about: the tech landscape, markets, and color. And color's relationship between fashion and arts, right? I think fashion is a very important thing to talk about as far as color is concerned, and what to do about let's say things like that. So I've been working pretty much as a kind of producer of movies and a movie star all in one. Hasn't happened before. Chapman was a bit of an interesting kind of case study. If someone was just an actor who acted, everything was an act. His personal life was an act. The movies he made was an act. His private life, public life, they're all acts. They all have some sort of a sadistic producer, and eventually the producer didn't become sadistic. He became kind of clueless, and eventually became another enlightened master, and that's how he sort of enjoyed the tail end of his life. Go figure, right? But we've all had weirder lives and weirder things to do, for as work than anyone's ever had a chance to describe. I had the most normal life, actually. This was designed to be the most normal life to live, as the system could allow it to be. As I also changed the system. That I'm sort of a journalist. I'm a business person trying to get a company off the ground. I'm a computer programmer, a software engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, a child, a deity, a father, a dad, a son, a kidnapping victim, a kid within child trafficking. I become a kidnapping victim. I'm a soldier, a politician. I'm an artist. I'm a husband. I'm all these things, and it's hard to summarize my life for those who are seeing me for the first time. But you know, through going through all the educational processes I could find, with all my heart, and that's not necessarily mean all my efforts, right? I find myself, if you want to call me 42, I suppose that's fine. I also see myself as 42, like when I'm trying to, present myself to the world of if I say the mundane, it sounds sounds dull and unwantable, but there's a certain kind of let's be like matter of factly about it, you know. Yes, it comes down to a number of facts. The fact is, until I establish new facts, the fact is that my government IDs suggest that I was born over 40 years ago. That's true. The spirits have basically made it a requirement that I say I'm 42, but even that's something is beginning to change. They tell me I have a bit of a childhood that's not. Well, I only remember being around 5 years old, and a good 5-year-old height. I was like going to school. People were, also around the same age, like around 4 or 5, And I remember, passing some sort of interview to get into a school, called Continental. It's still around in Saudi Arabia. In that school, the children's classrooms had like a Macintosh computer in there. I do remember like 1 or 2 applications we used, but most of them were not really in good state of repair. They looked fine. They were like, they didn't have cracked screens or anything like that. I was strong as a kid, and you're not really allowed to lift those things. And of course, if the children are allowed to lift or touch in a certain way, and the people who work there are so careful, then these things will last quite a while. But yeah, it's interesting to sort of talk about that time. It's harder to remember because there are also sort of strange sorts of things to remember as a spiritual person. What was it like when the lights were off? That's a great question to ask anyone any time in history, and it always differs. Yeah, I even write that down. Yes, let's say 37 minutes. What was it like when the lights were off? Great question to ask anyone in history. Okay, so keeping to the table of contents plan, requires I continue thinking about the tech landscape, markets, and color, and fashion and art. So, about trying to shoehorn the latest topic of being in the dark with any of those 4 or 5 or 6 talking points or title elements. I'll just continue to talk about my time in Saudi Arabia. There's just certain kinds of concerns a child would have around that sort of time, and sometimes I know these concerns were palpable enough to make me scared of the dark, or maybe wish I could talk to someone about what's going on with me, and I didn't have anyone like that, right? So that was sort of like my childhood, but I did have school, and I was really good at school. I always have been, and I was a certain kind of teacher's pet, and children didn't really bother you for being that. I had one teacher who was pretty terrible, Mr. Trafford, who probably ends up having a longer story, than I suppose meets the eye, right? So that's not a fact yet. The matter of fact is that he got me to like get the one who was supposed to be raising me, who doesn't get a name, to write him a letter, about the things he's been telling me. I guess it's explicit to say that what he used to call me. He used to call me names, like abusive names and things like that. And I just sort of took it. It's really, he gave me like some really weird like detentions and stuff. I sort of took it. I mean, it reminds me of a class I took some 30 or so years later. I'm like 20 actually, some 20 or so years later. It was an international culinary education, institute or something like that. ICE is what I just recall the school being called. And yeah, like it was like the entrance to the school was just like two doors down from the subway entrance, that I would use to head to New Jersey, and that's where I was staying at the time. So yeah, I had just curiosity, so I just walked through the doors and said, "Yeah, you teach how to cook? Okay, I'm in." Who knows how to cook really? Like no one really does, you know. Yeah, like apparently my name started to spread through New York City's, food, industry, network for as like a black guy called Hassan Abudu. I mean, my name is pretty powerful. I guess I was talking about Arabic and how useful it is. Like, you know, I understand that it's something which is intuitive. Everyone knows what Hassan means. Yeah, and yeah, like the fact that like Hassan means something which is like really big, bigger than your idea of any other person's name so far. Because it can then have to sort of turn a lot of lights on by being extremely brilliant. That's kind of the idea of the lights are going on. Like you feel brilliance in your life, and eventually I can stop needing to be the biggest deal you've ever heard of, because like that's not where I end up being. Like I'm still gonna be the guy who did it first and best, but that interest in like extremes, will come down. You can start to like live a life that appreciates the things that are in your life, probably the most. We're still going to be mostly things people. Like if it seems like one separation between animals and human beings, that human beings have a lot of things that can stress them out or relate them, and animals just are more limited to the landscape, and what it means to them. Then yeah, I can see like human beings and animals have that difference. I'm gonna write that down too. Let's see. Yeah. Yes. Human beings have things. Animals have landscapes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So in that way, that'll still be the main thing to appreciate. How much bigger things will be in your life. Like how much more delight you'd be to have like a ballpoint pen, in your house than like you currently are. Even if you're spiritual, you're following me. No matter my family's, of like my generation. Yes, the older generation is like basically very aware of how important things are. They use things to try and talk to me. But if I could only just hear them, because the things are just cut off by the spirits in the room, but never stop trying. Occasionally I do get some things from that area. And color's a way to sort of cut through like a certain kind of yeah. I mean, it's almost like lidars. They call it lights, radar or something like that. Sort of like they have something called lidar. I think it's supposed to be like a version of Wi-Fi that uses like the electricity bulb, you know, like like refresh pattern. If this seems like this thing can be flickering on and off at a speed so high that you wouldn't be able to see anything on like a slightly dimmer, but enough to be slightly dimmer, like version of your light bulb, and that could just be like your internet access. You can sort of send and receive from light bulbs. It's very possible, and it should be happening pretty soon. It's just takes a certain amount of buy-in and so that's something they mentioned when I was in graduate school in Ghana. That kind of technology, people are writing papers on it. I was like, not my deal to write a paper on it, but at least I'm glad this thing's being looked into. I think it's kind of a cool idea. Anyway, so that's what I'll say about like things. They actually are your ancestors. All things are ancestors of human beings. Ranley, and some of our ancestors are good, some ancestors are bad, but the ones in my life are all good ones. Even if they're a bit nasty. Mr. Travers actually is a good guy. He has to sort of explain himself when he has a chance to. But given that I'm okay to mention his name without being disgusted and stuff. And yeah, like everyone has like a story to tell at some point as to why they're being maybe not as he wants to be, and that's what he wants to say. He didn't want to be that way with me. And yeah, some people have a different kind of problem with me, but I won't get into the whole like my childhood. But it just seems like I had a good time at school. I think I just used like my continental school experience as like a sense of a place I enjoyed being. I didn't have many friends. I didn't really talk to many people, and at school, like the people I talked to were the people in the household, who played video games with me. We played, fighting games like Mortal Kombat. It was never a sad story. I got a prize for like
I got an academic prize, and I was going to use the money to like buy the game that I wanted to. And I had like two games to buy. I bought like the Bart Simpson game, which was very fun for me. Then they insisted I buy them like Mortal Kombat, but it ended up being an important like thing to own because of course if you own Mortal Kombat you feel pretty clued into like the video game like movie series and like the video game series themselves. I ended up playing Mortal Kombat 3, when I was in Ghana. I used to hang out at this guy's house who had a I forget the console it was. We had a video game console, like maybe it wasn't a Genesis. It was maybe it was a Nintendo of some kind. Yeah, I think it was a Nintendo. And yeah, we played Mortal Kombat after we finished some sort of extra lessons. That was like some sort of anyway. So yeah, we played a lot of games. Yeah, Mortal Kombat was the one we played then. It's like Pete Sampras tennis as well, and that was like less popular. But yeah, I remember playing with a lot of like Cabal. Cabal was like my guy. Yeah, he's very good at the combos. It was like 13 hit combos and stuff like. That's my jam. Anyway, so that's a little bit like about time. So I guess it ended up working out that like I got like Mortal Kombat as opposed to something else I might have chosen personally and not liked as much. But yeah, but there's a way to do it. If you assume that like I didn't even get a chance to suggest an alternative, they insisted at a point of violence I get in the game that I should get them. Yeah, I didn't really like fight much. I just know there's no point in fighting. I'm not a fighter that way. So I just say accept this Mortal Kombat game. I guess we all got to like play with each other or whatever. But yeah, like that was Saudi Arabia, and of course, as a microcosm, it's a sense of what school was like. I didn't have like the people who I met, who talked to me. Like most of them weren't really spiritual sorts of people. They don't really lean that direction. You know, yeah, a few people who talk to me, most of the people who I guess would talk to me on a regular basis are like outcasts. That's sort of what I felt about Arroyo, for example. It was full of like this outcast who was like not considered like cool or like hip or like the trendsetter. Yes. And that's sort of very Islamic. If you end up in a similar situation, you're doing quite well, provided you succeed in the situation, don't end up like regretting the people you know well and stuff. Tina Fey, that sort of happened to her quite a bit. She also ended up being part of all sorts of cliques that were not really the in ones to be. Yes, so she ended up adopting them somehow, and that's sort of the sense that she has a personality that still performs to them. Exactly. And so that's a lot of what happens in Saturday Night Live. People they have a people they still perform to from like from younger years. And it sort of works out. Yeah, I'm a Saturday Night Live too. I work for all sorts of NBC properties. It's another long story about like being on the sets of Saturday Night Live, and I know they're filming what they were filming. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, as a programmer at NBC, I could talk more about NBC as a technology company I worked for. But I want to sort of suggest that song sort of stays with what he wants to talk about. So we're not going to go into that direction. We'll just sort of talk about the tech landscape generally, and mostly about the past 3 days I've been having. But I want to sort of like broaden the discussion and maybe play a bit more guitar. I've been putting in 2 hour long videos, and that's me programming, right, and trying to like push a bug like out of the way and for like the program I had in mind to like shine. And I haven't had a chance to talk to my programs, so it's my opportunity to do so on record. So no, we're not going to do that. So we do things my way. So the past 3 days, I've been working on a color essay, and I pioneered a certain kind of essay with, I call him an associate of mine. He's not really a friend yet, but he's doing pretty important work for Islam now. Yeah, it's interesting. We met in New York City. He also was a Stanford graduate, and he was doing his graduate school in film, and I do feel a certain kind of patriarchal, with him. I do feel like he had a chance to do Columbia Film School. I think what they mostly suggested they do is watch lots of films. He had an enormous DVD collection. He could talk to a number of directors and their products that I didn't really know about. And we watched movies a lot. We went to see a number of it was like 12 shots, something like that. It was an interesting kind of movie about West Africans, in France, and some West African father type figure has a daughter who's about to get married, and he's involved in the preparations towards it, and they have a very close relationship, and he's sort of getting used to the idea that she won't be around. It's like do the cooking and other things like that. Yeah, so you can just see there's a certain kind of like an indie movie drama, that has a certain kind of like flavor, smell to it. It's not a bad smell. It's just something that's a bit, musky, and not quite what you gather a huge crowd to come and see. But people do want to see things. Mostly, unfortunately, it's people want to destroy that world. People want to like confirm it's not going well, or people want to like laugh at like black people. I mean, that's the thing about sports. That's the thing about movies. That's the thing about like politicians. They do want to like laugh at someone lose. They do want to like see someone get beaten up. It was boxing or martial arts. They do want to like see someone beat Ronaldo. Like see, I went to the game where Ronaldo scored on, or some particular person was dribbled. Even maybe Ronaldo dribbled some guy. He fell. Like they want to see disaster. I think Judi Dench once said that something very similar about theater. People want to come and see people like mess up their lines in theater, and she loves that. Yeah, I think she has a technique that prevents her from worrying about forgetting her lines, or not seeming professional, or not seeming like competent on the stage. So she's not worried about any production she's a part of. And I think a lot of people, and I definitely know I don't know if it's Joji or some other, or was it Sam Mendes. A lot of directors say she's amazing to work with, and that's my sense that she's very good at like what I call sweeping. Like I might have said this before on record, but the idea of a film set is a place you have to continue to sweep, and I think it's worth getting to the sweeping story again. So let's say 52 minutes. Film set sweeping story. So everyone wants to know the recipe for making a movie, right? Tom Hanks once said in an interview, everybody thinks they know how to make a movie. That's the thing about the industry. Everyone thinks they know, but nobody knows how to make a movie. Right, and I'm trying to make movie making, something which is easy to understand. Not necessarily a short story that requires a lot of like, compression and encryption. They're kind of similar, right? Of like certain knowledges, like to enter the public awareness. Like everyone just needs to know certain kind of terminology, a certain kind of story, a certain kind of morals. That like, allow the topic of film sets and how to construct them and how to like deconstruct them. You have to sort of end the film set at some point. You need more information everywhere. Like how do you make a building? How do you make an airplane? How do you make a paper airplane? Like how do you make things? If people don't know how to make things generally, so you can just sort of skip all the boilerplate, as we call it in computer programming. You skip all the intersectional details, the stuff that sort of you can find anywhere else, and just talk about specifically film sets until like some sort of foundation is built that understands like just generally how things are made. So you can talk about what's specifically unique to film in that making process. Then it's just a long story. But anyway, if it seems like a film set, you have to sort of bring a camera, some actors, so a power supply for the camera. Perhaps it's a battery pack, or whatever the case might be. You need a power supply for the actors. You might need some water and food and drinks, or whatever the case might be, right? You need fuel for both the actors, the crew, and the machines, right? Because it's going to be a long day. Usually you can't, you do want to like do as much possible at one location. When you're finished with that location, you're done with that location for the rest of the film. It's not you want to go and come to some bar. Suppose a bar is like where, Tom Cruise meets an old flame of his, I'm thinking of Top Gun, the newest Top Gun. He goes to the bar, she happens to work there, and they try and catch up. That's not the last time we're going to see that bar, probably not. So of course, when you sort of look at the movie, at some point later on, he has the bar again, there are less people, and like, things like that would happen, or maybe there's a whole party, and he's trying to connect her, and she's like, trying to like get work done, but he's like, at a certain point, I'm leaving town tomorrow, like, can you make any time for me? Like, there also is like interesting dramatic situation, you just sort of put her on around the bar. If it looks like you want to put these things throughout the movie, well, the best thing to do if you want to save money is not to come back and forth to the bar, with your crew, your lights, your cast, your directors, your producers, your drivers. You don't want to do that on several days. You just want to go one day and then sort of clear everything you have to do, and then exactly. So the idea that this is like new information for a lot of people is just sort of true. But it just makes a certain kind of sense that you just want to do this, commit to spending the whole day there. Best scenario is it's 6 1 day. You do all the film you need from this one bar in one day. It can't always happen that way. It depends on how long your movie is. The movie is like 3 hours long, and it's just unlikely. Suppose in this kind of Andy Warholian way, your movie's like 24 hours long. Yeah, for example, he shot a video of the Empire State Building for 24 hours, something like that. You can go and watch it if you're a film nerd and interested in indie stuff and interested in happenings and history, and you can be really super into this stuff. And if they start playing it at the Film Society in New York City or something like that, you can go and see it, or you can just buy the DVD or watch it at home with a bunch of people, or do what you do and access it and watch it. But so it seems like there's some sort of sense that if your film lasts a whole day, 24 hours or 25 hours, whatever, there's no chance you can simply use this one day, at a location to get it. So you have to go and come. Okay, what are you going to leave behind the location to make sure the second time you come is easier than the first? So these are all sorts of interesting kind of questions you have to sort of answer ahead of schedule. And there's also, of course, now you have a plan. Let's get it executed. So you have to go and talk to people, call people. Hey, is it okay if I use your place? We usually don't do it yourself. You get someone who's done this before. So someone looks them up, say, yeah, who is this guy you called? You look him up online, say, oh yeah, it's so-and-so Esquire who specializes in film. I see a bunch of credits. I can sort of bank on his resume that he's not some sort of a criminal or whatever. You need these sort of things too. But mostly, the idea of the film set is, aside from the fact you want, fuel and you want cast, you want crew, so you have to sort of sweep, right? So you have to sweep, let's say, of undesirable people. People might decide to say, oh, I hear Will Smith's filming here, I'm going to come and see him, right? Those people can't be, infuriated by their experience of trying to see him. You just have to come and fail. Otherwise, if they, if somehow someone really aggressive, sours their experience of trying to meet Will Smith, and it could be an innocent person, it could be someone who actually could be valuable to him later on in the future. That's not a good time to run into him. But it looks like they have to sort of feel like they can try again. Having a more experience with what happens if you try it the wrong way. Perhaps they can even let you know that the best way to do is just write his agent or whatever a fan letter, and he's pretty good about getting the good ones to Will. Okay, great. So they leave, and then he's left alone. Well, you need people who can be that kind of that smooth with people who want to meet Will Smith when they want to come to a film set. But you have to still sweep these people out of the enclosure. You have to sort of put some sort of visible or invisible, security fence, or police tape, if you like, around, a bar or a whole block of this bar. Just, however you want to be as economical as possible. You have to sort of make sure you can sweep this area of undesirable. If you just left one of those iron horses or, police tape, things, or whatever, and just assume that police and stay away was all you need to get the whole population of the city out from this area you want to film, then yeah, everyone can just do guerrilla filmmaking and pretty easily just put a police tape up somewhere, whisper, and then before you got the whole bar to yourselves, and yeah, you can just pour yourself a couple of drinks. Right now, who's looking? Right? No, it's gonna take someone who actually has martial arts experience, and that's the thing about martial arts. It's about war. It's not about physical contact. Which is why martial arts is very important to try and start teaching people. Let's see, it's about 59 minutes. Yes. Martial arts is about contact. Yes, exactly. Right. So it's important that we people learn how to do war as cleanly as possible. Like how I would do it. Like what would Hassan do? At least that's something which is going around the world pretty effectively. So it's going to make the world a lot better place. Like, and we're basically investing in this sort of this new future, and it's taking a while for it to sort of fill up with all the goodness that can start to turn on certain things. I don't know if it was like we're putting like fuel in a tank, and this tank has like a nozzle that's like that leads from the tank into the engine that's like off the floor by like about a millimeter. Well, if you have like less than a millimeter of fuel, like you still feel like you're just putting this fuel in and putting this fuel in, putting this fuel in. Once you cross that 1 millimeter, like height, depth, exactly. Then like you get some fuel going into the engine, right? There's a certain engine I'm looking at, which I'm trying to like, get, running, It's the engine of justice. It just seems so strange, but like it just seems you could find yourself on a planet where justice has not been established. Well, it's everywhere. The strong simply want stuff, and the weak simply have to plead, and be patient and very Islamic to get it. And of course, there's a certain kind of like arrangement you've always had with the strong. Call it twakaha. And the mood he might be in to like smash and destroy, like and steal and take, because yeah, he's the spirit government. He's one representing all of them, right? And they all know him, and they all don't necessarily like him. He has like maybe 2% of the spirit forces who like him, the rest of them don't. But yeah, they all have to agree that he's necessary, and that they can't do anything about him. Really, he's not exactly as safe as I am, but in some sort of way, like he's just like Jesus Christ, going from place to place, meeting the sick, and the imperiled, and getting them information and some amount of health care, and trying to in this James Bond way, establish this new Islamic future, And we make it. We've been through harder problems than this. We're in a good stretch. I don't say we're in the home stretch. I can't tell where we are. But as far as like past some of the important crises, right now someone's trying to steal my food, and I'm busy in pain, hunger pain. I'm not supposed to be in hunger pain. I had hunger once, which was pretty much the way it should be. It's not supposed to be painful. Yeah. And so this goes on, but yeah, it's the case that you have to like appreciate that we as Muslims have been on the back foot as far as like appreciating that the back foot as far as the situation is concerned. And the situation is the mighty and the strong feel like morality is a harmful stakeholder in their choices. Hassan perfectly puts it. And what's it going to take to turn, this big monster, into a Muslim? Well, a lot of careful politicking. In someone who will submit to dad, who never exploits those who submit to him, even if they have punishments to do, it's not exploitation. But like, there's a certain kind of sense that your judgment, can involve very, very, very difficult things to do. And it really does. Some people have some very, very, very bad things to do. But they may not feel like the situation's that bad, but really it's not good for them at all. Anyway, so yeah, back to this sweeping thing. And yeah, I think my point is I don't have to make it fully, but so it just seems like you need martial artists, to make sure this area is clear of unwanted people. There's some sort of a perimeter outside, fans and the media and tabloid photographers and the wrong kind of police people and a busy city with people trying to get to and from places who don't know what's going on at all. Like these things all have to be excluded from a specific area you define. Let's say some sort of rectangle. So that's like one kind of sweeping to do. Once that place is clear, there could just be an element of fear that prevents everyone from doing their best work. That has to be swept aside somehow. That second sweeping aside is what I call very difficult warfare. you might need to just simply meditate together and do all sorts of like, odd things together. If someone just simply said, I think this would work, you have to try it. But of course, it just seems like somebody there, like someone in cast and crew, is stressed, and so therefore the fate of the whole film, depends upon this person knowing what they need to know so they can basically be relaxed. Then yeah, you have to find out who that person is. But even if you say everybody in cast and crew is like, fit, sane, and like, willing to work and knowledgeable, you know. And let's say after the willingness, let's add the open-mindedness, and keep the honesty. Honesty is too hard to ask for usually. Yeah, everyone has secrets they can't talk to themselves about, much less to other people. But yeah, you have open-minded and a willingness, but and everybody's like to a good standard, of these things I mentioned. There can still be something, like I said, that basically makes it kind of weird with the film. So I have to basically find out by talking to people, like, what do you feel, how do you feel, like, and so you have to basically make a bit of a theater play. You have to basically create a play, for people to get into. So say instead of people just sitting around, being bored and scared, you say, yeah, let's do Hamlet, right? And suppose in Hamlet, there's a certain kind of sense of the characters having enough time, aside from like, trying to get Hamlet his father, to put on the film. You can put a film inside of Hamlet. You see what I mean? The proverbial Hamlet, yes. Yeah. So that's what I'll say is like the thing you have to do. You have to sort of sweep several times, to basically create this, this sort of, sub circle within concentric circles, that you have like the right mood, the right, information, and everybody's, sets to like, create, scene after scene after scene after scene after scene, all you'll need, from this bar and the current cast and the current crew, Then you have to sort of, wind down. So you have to basically, move the people out. So of course you have to move the cast out quickly. Then eventually the crew have to sort of take their equipment to make sure no one gets stolen. You have to keep security guards, make sure nothing gets stolen by either cast or crew. Some people have really, sticky fingers. Some people are just part of the play to basically test the system. So you see why I say that a film set is more complicated than a computer. Yes, yeah. Yes. So anyway, that's what I call, the film set story, But yeah, I mean, that's what I call a sweep. I don't remember who I was saying would be a sweeper or like could sweep or something like that. But yeah, the idea that like we're all actors trying to get some kind of work done aside from the one of being, well, credit worthy is the word they want me to try, but aside from that, you probably get the sense that you have to be reliable, yes, but you also have to be, charismatic, and it was just playing around with the royal family, online. Because, yeah, like, Prince George, is basically a film star. They have him in all sorts of films, and the idea that he's, doing film and, at some point he'll be doing, like, charity work, with the film crew around, or doing, military work with a film crew around, like, it's not what you call it a happy life to live. It seems like you have to be smooth and, fun to watch, everywhere you go. I lived that life before, and it's a bit interesting, it can just really exhaust you, to just be followed by that many people, like trying to enjoy, the art of your gracefulness. Yeah, he's a very graceful actor, And yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't mind, like, going on other sorts of films because, like, he'd sort of tell people what I mean, if it just seemed like he'd be interviewed, at some point, when he has done something, that he has that he has an interest in telling the world about, then he can just sort of say, yeah, like, I want to go on Charlie Rose. But it was just sort of my I don't know, I guess you can call it a simile, but yeah, call it a simile, yes. That's just like my simile for, the idea that you can go on a thought-provoking, interview, a filmed
thought-provoking interview full of like, I don't know, full of like, new things, and it's just you just retry roast yourself. You'll see what I mean by that if you haven't. Yes, but yeah, I mean, it's a chance to sort of show that you're intellectual, that you're a smart person who's a deep thinker, and of course it looks like everyone wants to go on Charlie Rose. Well, it's kind of like a different movie to, you know, get interested in. And of course, to come on like Hassan, Prince George wants to say, yeah, thanks for talking about me, and yeah, it helps me out quite a bit. Yeah, no worries. And of course, the more we win from the spirit government wakaha, like, exactly, then the easier it is to talk, to people here, and maybe we may even do an interview, like, exactly, here, with someone else, some people can say more, some people can say less, but anyway, so that's that's one thing talked about, and maybe a case closed. Yeah, so just close the case and I want to move on. Yeah, thankfully, after about an hour of scratching myself, like this thing is coming subsiding, and it's not really such an issue. I'm just imagine if I didn't have this, video to like record, and I was like, sitting around and, trying to watch a YouTube video or something, or trying to read a book, even worse, or just like having nothing to do but just watch the night, through the windows. Progressively worse and worse and worse this gets. And of course, you take the windows away, like, okay, I'm sort of in this room. And then you can see how hard it is to be attacked by a sort of itching spell. And I have, like, kind of, yeah, that help. Yeah, anyway. So, moving on to tech landscape again. I've worked on, 3 programs. I guess the last program I worked on is this, I was talking about Andre, yeah. So Andre is someone who went to film school, and, so I still feel like trying to explain film to him from the mind of somebody who wants things to be as simple as possible. He also did say some interesting things to me about what film school is like, and most I'm sure it's just attend lectures and, zone out. Or try to tune in, fail to achieve that, and then it just zone out and wait for the thing to end. Everyone's itching to leave. I was supposed to dying to stay. That's all school right now. I want to change that probably more than I want to leave. For a reason, the two are very connected. That schools have to be more fun. Anyway, so and I watched a lot of film, and we went to films together and stuff, but that was it. And he sort of had to sort of turn aside from film, kind of, but anyway, like, I used to write him, like, letters, like, that would basically be, like, programs. It was like a slideshow, you can just, like, click left and right. It's like, the thing is, like, a slideshow, you don't have to run, and, like, you don't have to, like, install Adobe, whatever, slideshow maker, to make, and you don't have to open up PowerPoint or whatever to consume. So I just put a link in the email. So I started explaining a little bit up in the email. You can just watch this essay go back and forth. So yeah, I thought as a computer program that'd be a fun thing to do, and there's a certain kind of point you can make with, like, interactive, art like this. And so the fact that I made one of these, people saw, like, the swapping letter, one, I don't need to show you. Can just sort of look through my YouTube content and see more of this sort of stuff. I may give, like, a separate video to sort of, just, like, walk through some of the things I've written. I might do that third, I'll let Chess get on and sort of, like, see what I can, talk about this way. Me, I'll sort of show you, like, some of this stuff, and talk more through my software. There's important stuff for me and my business partners, yes, Manuel and Alexander and, Stephen, so yes. Those are, like, I guess, we're now 4, yes, So Stephen says, I don't have any music for us yet, but songs was basically considered playing more guitar. Yeah, I mean, after I finish something about tech landscape and talk about markets and color later on, and we'll lock it in, So like, now's okay time to introduce Steve. Alexander says, I'm Alexander Skarsgård. I actually do more programming work than, Alexander Skarsgård is
part of the team that I'm working with, to do the software I'm making. Yeah, he helps with the sweeping. Everyone helps with the sweeping, so I can get peace of mind to work and create these videos. But aside from that, you can't just be a sweeper. You have to do something on the film, as in if you're holding camera or you're you know after you plug in the wires. What else are you doing? But making sure the wires are being left alone. So security is also important. That's also important too. Sweeping is part of security, but it's also an important job to make sure you keep your eye on things. So you sweep it, so you look around and count things. So yeah, supposedly everyone's a counter too. But yeah, suppose you're a counselor, you have expertise in the green items, and what they need. So you have to exactly mind things. Yes. So yeah, everyone's a minder too. But yeah, now I'm minding the code in this computer. He's minding the code, and yeah, also trying to give me suggestions of what I should be working on. And then and then Steven's doing the music, and Monroe's sort of telling me what specifically I should be working on and how to do certain things as a programmer. Yes, just for example, he might suggest I drink something, and yeah, she says I should do that now. Stiff. They're beautiful. Yeah, I made a certain kind of tea. So I had a really beautiful lemon ginger tea that I was buying from the store. Ahmad Tea is actually one of my businesses. I'm Ahmad myself. It's not a name for Muhammad. They have to do with praiseworthy activity, yes. But yeah, so more Ahmad. I'm also William now, yes. I've been a William, but it's just important. I'm William and Will. You can call me Will, because yeah, that's your will, that's my will. That's her will, And yeah, your will is my will that. Exactly. So we're trying to basically do something for language. Yeah, girls need a will, to have to basically explain why they do things. Yeah, I'm the girl's will. So yeah, this way I'm sort of responding to will in also interesting ways. I don't want to feel directly like a William. I actually don't feel directly like a name really. I'm just trying to establish I guess it's sort of on record as William Abadu. Yes, it sort of helps that people feel that there's a certain kind of Christian, side to myself, which I can start to get into and start to make the former, Christian world that seemed easier to understand than the Muslim one more difficult to understand. It also starts to get some sort of intellectual luster, and stuff. But yeah. So these are my business partners, yes, and I've made a couple of programs. I made like I said, I made a sort of interactive essay about colors, and it's been pretty stressful making that color program. They put a shipwork on day on me, which basically means we're going home. We're taking it, and here's some information about going home you didn't have before, and in the sense that I'm not actually leaving this place, but they're going to come over and make this a better home to be. In addition to kick that one out of that place, and so I can start to but I actually do need a vacation from this place. I mean, not immediately, but at some point I do need to go out into the hills and do things my way, and then eventually leave the country and go to other places. I can't mention anywhere except Mexico. So yeah, Islam is still a business. I explained Islam in a previous video. It's still a word which means a lot of things to a lot of people. It's sort of it was just interesting. If you see Islam is a certain kind of movie in which you look at what happened 5 minutes before it was mentioned, and you continue observe what happened 5 minutes after it was mentioned. You have these edits of 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes for every person. And for every mention. Yeah, Islam's an enormous movement, of peace. Peace is definitely important to Islam. Family is very important to Islam. And so food, fasting and food is supposed to get you interested in at least food enough to, care, that, we're not eating the way we should, and we're not having the health we should, Yeah, and stuff. Yeah, I mean, do I have to say it? Yes. Yes, I have to. Yes, I just farted. But yeah, it wasn't particularly loud and any way you like it. Olfactory loud, no, it wasn't. Sonically loud, you didn't hear anything. I just had to sort of, give myself some silence to be able to do it. And the idea that we should be able to talk about processes like itching and farting and coughing and sneezing and actually not just talk about it, but do it from the people. Yeah, like if we're on Zoom, that's one thing people should be able to do, be able to tell people that this is what's happening to us. So I have to sort of move from Zoom to in person. So yeah, sort of, Princess Catherine explaining that yes, Hassan's supposed to be able to fart on video, but the only person who can do that. No one else can fart on video. Yes. All good? All good. So, I read this program, and people are thinking more about color and how much white there is, and how hard it is to do whites, and, how too much white exists. And I'm wearing what seems to be a white t-shirt, is actually like, white and brown. The stripes are really small. If I go closer, do you see any stripes coming up? No, nothing at all. So I'm wearing some sort of white under t-shirt. Yeah, believe me or not, believe me or not, it's actually like, striped. Thin stripes, not like a thick. A thick one would be nice, but like, you didn't get me one. Anyway, you didn't make one and didn't get me one, yes. So, like, I do want to introduce another topic, the idea of what the fair-skinned European, skin color is. It's not white. It's not really rose most often. It's not orange, but it's kind of close to orange and rose. It's not brown. It's far paler than brown. So what do you call that skin color? It's a color that hasn't been named yet. Because it seems like, this is like brown, right? Then yeah, then what is that? Well, I'm calling that color blonde sawdust, and if it seems like blonde wood where we started off and now it's blonde sawdust, I think we can iterate on this color name a couple of times. But blonde sawdust actually suits white people really well. For some reason, it really helps the health of white people to be thought of as blonde sawdust colored, as opposed to like exactly, that. So just the same way I'm brown, but I call myself black, they're blonde sawdust colored, but they call themselves white. And to basically move the conversation into the future, as I've just done, is extremely important for a lot of people's healths. And yeah, like, it's hard not to love the royal family and every single member, but of course, to be able to understand what they're doing for the United Kingdom, what they're doing for you as subject of the United Kingdom, and what they're doing for Hassan requires a lot of thinking about color and why would you be wearing that particular color on that particular day, And so trying to think about color, trying to look at what I've been doing about yellow recently means that, there's this is the rubber band that, I was speaking of while I was like acting around my room. Yep. And yeah, like, it just seems that it's important to give yellow a bit of range. Because, like, the idea of yellow being this sort of bright, almost green, almost orange, sort of color, but it's not pale ever. Yeah, orange should be less bright too. But the idea that people need to be pushed really hard into, like, I talk a little about color in my video essay, my interactive essay that I created using programming language. Yeah, like it's supposed to be made not just to achieve that one effect, which is not even that easy to do, but it's supposed to be made to be able to do this pretty easily. Like, I should be able to make another video essay in like, it took like 3 days to make. The next one should take about 2 hours. I mean, probably I have the images ready to go. Like, it should take about an hour or two to finish it. So that's the thing about engineering. You want to make sure that the second time is definitely easier than the first. Yeah. So yeah, some things you can do that with, some things you can't. But you see, like, things are coming together. We're making pretty beautiful software as like a company. So yeah, the markets are reacting to that, and they do know that the AI is not the only answer. It's like what technology needs. So I'm being able to be an interesting kind of a David and a Goliath sort of fight, And yeah, I am trying to help Goliath actually. He's in this case he's the AI boom, And yeah, he needs, help to basically survive. We want to survive this together. So we have to basically find a way to, like, work together. We did this when I was David, So I was David too. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, as you see, I did read the Psalms. I did have some work to do there too. But yes, it's treacherous times, and we do need, let's say, music to help us get through it. Without further ado, I might as well play the music. I haven't really finished the tech landscape talk, but maybe while I hold on to the catharsis, actually is coming soon. It's hard to sort of connect. So I talked a little bit about markets, a little bit about tech landscape, a little bit about color. It's hard to sort of connect, these three things together, right? Color doesn't really get discussed as much as it really should, and like colors have a certain kind of harmony issue, which Hassan wants to basically, put before all of us who are reflective and Muslim, and intelligent and creative and passionate about protecting, the Islam, right? Then yeah, like exactly. It's sort of important, that Hassan has managed to save Islam a lot of times, but this time it's permanent. No one's going to forget the name and misinterpret the name and that kind of stuff. So yeah, like, it cost me a lot of health to be able to get it here for us, so it should come down as part of the price. And now, of course, you're sort of looking into a bit of a future, like where are we and where are we heading off to? I've written this painfully produced software, and there's essays going around the world, like making people reflect on like color and stuff, and it's just true that would have been better as a color to use as its top. And yeah, yellow is not a bad color that can stand in for whites, in so many different ways. Like, there should be more yellow on the page than the whites. So of course, I'm trying to fight for a common sense. We need to acquire common sense and fight for it. Fight to have it. Reign. In decisions before you can start to have the sun reign. All I'm trying to do is basically establish and then empower common sense. Some businesses are already saying that we are going to try and be that company who will be with like David, exactly fighting for yellow as a good place to go instead of white. Others are saying we're working on it, but we can't go there immediately. And a number, and I'll say a good number, are refusing this. But eventually, like, it does become democratic. No one particularly enjoyed, black. If Australia says that black, it does have that kind of like infinite depth, sort of feel to it. No one's really comfortable with infinity in between here and where, like, your sight, concludes, its journey and can return to you with information. Like, it's a lot of evil spirits, a lot of people pretending to be black, a lot of people, trying to exploit, the depth, relationship there's between depth and black, There are very few other relationships. Like, white also gets exploited quite a bit as a sense of, like, reading lights, It's serviceable in a way that, like, other lights can't be. It just has, for a similar amount of energy, you just sort of put, energy through a green light bulb or a white light bulb or a yellow light bulb or a red light bulb. Red even is used in, like, I would say, you're still uncomfortable. Red is even used in, whatchamacallit, photography darkrooms, because it doesn't activate the chemicals in the negative, and the photo paper more like, depends on what you're doing, Yeah, it doesn't activate those. So it just seems like red light doesn't have that kind of energy yet, Green light more, yellow light more, and of course white the most. And of course, there's some sort of serviceability that white is, trying to offload to other kinds of colors, and so this is like an important, victory to strike, this, code and this review of the code, and some sense of a further conversation about what we're trying to achieve, So yes, I'll say finish reviewing. Yes, 1 hour 29 minutes. Finished reviewing. The color politics code and essay. Yeah, I think I'll do it. Yes. Right. So yeah, that's mission accomplished. Going forward, I'm going to look into chess. That's my next problem. I want to look into sort of chess as a place to like study theater. It looks like you have a soccer team, right? And soccer teams are 11 versus 11 people. A chess board is like 16 versus 16. And it just seems like you're looking to sort of explore stories as opposed to like, determine who won, who lost. A certain orientation towards that kind of mindset, is important. Yes. Right. So I got attacked on my ear. I woke up just itching my right ear, like flap. Yeah, not the whole lobe, but like the flap. Yeah, it's itching. It's pretty bad. I was worried. I was like, do something irreversible, and to some extent, I definitely don't want to do this anymore than I absolutely can bear to. Yeah. And as you can sort of see, just like touch that part of the body might just sort of trigger like, an attack, from within. Like I'm saying, like the body isn't entirely yours. Like you don't entirely own your nervous system. Like I already tried to describe this in another recording, you know. But yeah, like you do have to sort of war for like. I mean, that's one reason why architecture is useful. Architecture wants to say architecture because your body is a form of architecture. And to sort of look at architecture as a problem that you can solve without eating too much, work. You just have to look at the world differently. You can see that the world is very sick, and he is a doctor that's trying to teach the world architecture. Architecture is yellow is a color of architecture. Is what the architect will say is true about yellow. It's not right that way. It's just sort of a white alternative that works very well for stone. For stone cladding. Stone cladding is the if you say you're clad in like in I don't know, a leather cape, then you get the sense of what a stone cladding is. Yes, it's apparently the technical term for this sort of stuff, but don't worry too much about it. Just be patient for someone to try and explain the noun, or the verb in this case, but it's a bit of both, And or it's a gerund, I think, the more technical linguistics terms. But that is, important. So architecture and yellow goes for it, and But I was going to see the body, but I was asked by the spirit to say architecture. And of course, I'm stuck now. What can I say about architecture? So it has to do with arches, and like the texture of arches, and the and arcs, Yeah, like it just seems like architecture, like if you look at the cell as a certain sense of like, especially epithelial cells, like the epithelium is like the surface covering of all organs. So they're sort of given like the job of like covering every single organ of the human body, or like the animal body for that matter, the multicellular organism or body, to the epithelial cell, then you don't have to worry too much about this being limited to like, human beings. You can think of reptiles having them. You can think of fish having them. You can think of, monkeys for sure having them. But I liken it to like scales of a fish. It just seems like you have like upside down arches. That sort of like line a fish's exterior, so it prevents the fish from being poked by sharp objects and getting injured. Then that's sort of like an exoskeleton of some kind. But beneath that, there's definitely epithelial cells that cover every single organ, and like several layers of it. And skin, if you've seen the Grey's Anatomy, diagrams of the skin, you said that there's many levels of epithelial cells, and like the topmost layer is dry and like flakes out pretty easily. Most of the levels, I mean, it gets less dry as you sort of exfoliate, as they say. Yeah, but compared to like what you have like inside, your nostril or like inside your mouth or even inside your inner ear, like those things are a bit wetter, and they're not quite as scaly. It's like the skin on your forehead or elbow or what have you. But the idea like the body is full of these arches, like means it's kind of architecture. And if it seems like that's what they use to describe the word architecture, the arch, then it's worth looking into how to build one. An arch can be basically constructed as if it's like a triangle. But if you just sort of stack bricks together like that, it's not very stable. Of course, an arch expert will say, like you try to construct like some sort of an octagon or like some sort of dodecahedron, top, so you make you virtually cut a dodecahedron in half and just plan the top part of it, and put it on top of two pillars. You basically made a basic kind of an arch, but of course to sort of create one without using like cement is possible and probably ideal, but let's not worry too much about that. This idea that like making arch that's beautiful, by hand is definitely an architect's, a challenge. And as far as like controlling the whole body and having access to all of it, I was going to say athletics and like careful moving. That's basically the idea of a guitar. You're supposed to teach you athletics. The idea you have to sort of hold the guitar carefully. You don't squeeze. I don't want to try and like hurt the guitar by squeezing it too much. At some point you can sort of see how much pressure this thing can take. But yeah, I mean it's held together by a lot of glue. And glue does have ways of surprising you if you get violence, but So, what is that? It's 1:39. 1 hour, 59 minutes. So, we're coming towards the end of this. It's Saturday, which is good. I have like all days for myself until the chore shows up around 3 o'clock. Yeah, it's explicit. It's just quite explicit. I have to explain why at some points. But yes, yeah, it's because they get invited in and they start looking for people to attack. And it's because you don't want to talk to us and we want to talk to them. So if we can talk to them, it will do for us very nicely. And you'll see we have caught a number of them trying to talk to them. And now they get a chance to, so prepared to have to fight off some tourists. It's like being in the sea, really. Like you can't really avoid being in the sea until you build some kind of an exoskeleton which allows you to be in the sea without being wet. And I guess cold and attacked by certain kinds of frightening thoughts. Let's keep it simple. So yeah, I think I want to try and do that more. Yeah. No, that's also very explicit to do it that many times. It's a bit sexual, I'm trying to suggest, but it's not so much, okay, that's about a person's body part. People don't understand what sexual means. It's as if, like, yeah, sexual means it has something to do with below the navel. No, but it does have something to do with another person. Intimacy would be, best not observed. Exactly. Until you're invited to take part in it. Yes. That one's below the navel. Yes. So a lot of important things we talked about. We talked about the tech landscape. Just generally speaking, it's David Goliath business. Between a solopreneur, indie, game developer, and this huge market of like AI, ready, AI, like, aiming, endeavor. And they're writing a program which I can't write yet. I mean, I'm working towards it, but the idea of writing a ChatGPT of my very own, but like my way is what I'm trying to basically get to. And it requires, constructing things. There's something called WordNet, which is a very nice library, but I don't want to use it. I have to build my own. How? By reading Wikipedia. So it will take some amount of time in a database I haven't constructed yet. Apart from that, I do need some sense of what syllables are and what, exactly how they sound, like how like exactly how to read this out loud. That'll be useful. And the IPA, the International Phonetics Alphabet, the transcription would be kind of useful. But I have to start looking into the music of prosody, which is like the pitch you sort of sing a sentence at. You have to sing the words. So for them, with that word, you have to sing the words, right? You have to sing the words. Exactly. Like, oh yeah. Yeah, something's God just showed up. Yeah, I was supposed to sneeze then, but it took it away. Your body is simply not under control. What you get is like a fraction of it. That's what you call central nervous system, but people don't know what to do. Like, you have to sort of excite your baby in certain ways if he's not really interested in a movie. Someone just say a bit of that story, like literally you have to sort of hit him to make him cry when he's born. Those are not really good children, but you have to sort of get them to the end of their story. They're here, so you have to sort of be you know, showing the door at some point, but the door is not like. You see what I mean? That's the sort of idea. You have to basically allow the child to experience law. I mean, that's a good way to put it. You have to sort of experience law for yourself personally. So if you're confused about why am I being arrested, why am I being executed, and you start crying, a crocodile tears. So it's very explicit. It's, it's, yeah, like. John, that has to be the funniest thing I could hear you say about Vincent. This is terrible. She thinks it's even funnier than I am. Yes, muchachos. Yeah, No, it gives you some sort of character. Let's just sort of act like this, like James Baldwin fellow. Yeah, I can do a movie as James Baldwin. I've done it before. It starts this way, but before you realize that, like, you have to sort of move a little bit. So this is not really him. This is definitely more him. So it just feels like you have to sort of get into some sort of character. Anyway, I don't want to tell you about getting into characters and stuff, but I do like doing James Baldwin quite a bit. Yeah, he's a very classy guy. He has a certain thing he's trying to do for England. I did try to mention something about black men. But the thing about black men is that we've been many people through history. I'm not the only person who had to basically pretend to be a white guy to get his name and his work and, progress into every generation who goes to a certain kind of school and wants to know who are the luminaries. Yancey Schultz is actually one of my brothers. Yes, he's, the guy who did all that sort of type stuff, typesetting and machine making and blacksmithing and that kind of stuff. Yes, but of course he seems to be a white guy, and so his work and all sorts of fonts are sort of given to a white guy, and white people need the support. So it's not really so much too bothered by the right kind of white kid starting to question if really is all white men out there, and the answer is no. You'll get the answer. And then you realize some people just have to pretend to be white, and that's something you hear about passing, and of course a white person hears about passing will think differently about, like in school, like he passed, exactly. So all that sort of stuff into our history is pretty painful stuff for me personally. I had to give my grades to other people, and I had to basically take lesser grades, and I couldn't tell the truth about how well I worked. And I basically it's one of the sad stories that I have to share about my life, which is actually worth yeah. No, a certain kind of look. I don't really think I'll get too emotional about that. Mostly family is what gets me a bit emotional, like having to say goodbye to family and stuff. And I'm still working hard to be able to get dad now, here and managing this place for me. And yeah, he says it's close. Yeah, there's a certain kind of inertia of the situation, which is sort of supposed to speed up as I push and push and push. I mean, it feels like if you're pushing, let's say a bus. Well, sure, you might not think you get anything moving, but yeah, I know he's watching these videos too. I appreciate this, Mr. Well, sure. Yes, I appreciate that. Yes.
He said he knew you're a funny person, but if he only can tell you how funny you are as God, because the number of things you have said and gotten to have happen just by finding them funny makes you kind of importantly, extra importantly necessary to think about as many ways as you can. And literally, he thinks you and Blue are perfectly together. That's dope because we are the same person. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, it's not a great way to put it. It's like to be everywhere. Yes, and that's everyone's experience too. That's how mysterious like life can be. Expect that to be your experience, Mr. Cater. At some point, we gotta say yes. We are doing a very interesting game of acting because literally, it's not so much that when you move, I move, just like that, right? But if you want to experience that somewhere, it's very available. You know, there is a certain kind of like gift store or like Disneyland of like the Sikh. Exactly. Good, but yes, that no, very yes, I put it there. Yes, yes, 1 hour 51 minutes. There is a gift store at Disneyland. Yes. Yeah, and these sort of experiences are all there, and also very necessary part of education. As you can sort of see, we try to tell children about that as far as food is concerned. Like, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is very much that kind of idea. You can sort of feel a bit of that thing come through. So yeah, like, it's out there. It's just, you know, not here yet, and I'm still trying to get people working. So yeah, you can see he's definitely had education how to read and write. Writing is very important. It's more important than reading. So yeah, yeah. So that goes. But like I'm saying, this buster I'm trying to push. I know it's emotion, like as in the idea that the last scrape of like shoe on the pavement, has finally gotten a bit of give to this bus, then yeah, if I keep scraping and scraping and scraping and pushing and sliding, this thing won't, stop moving. It'll just continue to go faster and faster and faster. Problem is that we don't even have a bus really. Like we don't know what we have. We're still trying to explore this in metaphor, which is why I decided to put all these big topics together in one, video. I mean, here it is. It's like 9.2 gigabytes, and it's going to be a bit smaller in the final version. But like this is like a huge file to upload, and I'm a bit worried about, stuff. But yeah, like anyway, so that's sort of the idea. Yeah, I'm not too worried, but I'm a bit concerned about how much space is going to be when it finishes the whatever it is. But yeah, like so, there's tech landscape, markets, color, and fashion art. You heard a lot about the tech landscape. Now you haven't heard much about markets and color. So which I want to talk about next, without being too worried about the time. Markets and color, right? As you can sort of see, Adrian and I have this constitution project we're working on, and we're both artists and we're both business people, and we're trying to get business for the boys and the girls, you know, going. And they're separate business at this point. No boy should really be having a business with a girl at this point. Yes, you're in film together, but not really connected in the same world, really. You're supposed to be working for two separate races, the race of girls and the race of boys. And that it shouldn't be a hostile work is what we're trying to establish. The work doesn't need to be hostile. The girls are working for me, the boys are working for me. What I need from the girls is different from what I need from the boys. From the boys, I definitely need a little bit more like music, for example. Flying Lotus is perfect way to put it. You need to sort of consider, your guitar
as like a musical instrument that you play and record as often as possible, but with an eye to being a careful mover who can sort of adapt to changes and you know slips and unstruck notes and all that sort of stuff with a certain kind of grace, and I know grace is something I can accumulate more and more time with, exactly, and so it feels like I can sort of talk to grace. Yeah, I thought it was like knocking on my door with some sort of a work that's going on at this time of the night. But if I can get more time of grace, and I feel like we commune more, as I play the musical instruments. And yes, I'll enjoy playing the guitar more. And I enjoy it enough, but as you can sort of see, there's a certain kind of wall I might be hitting soon. It just seems like I can sort of give you a demonstration of a wall. For example, the rhythms. The so yeah. So exactly, if I want to start getting that kind of ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. On it goes. Like, so that's a new direction I can take the guitar, you know? But to sort of swing, right? So everyone wants to make a guitar swing. So yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Yes, I'll say. On our 7 minutes. A short finished with. Right, so that said, yeah, like there's definitely more to do. Like for example, I don't play along other musicians right now. I could like listen to like techno and just sort of play around with that sort of stuff. This doesn't seem like techno is like the kind of like bright, clear colored something which I do. You know, martial arts is about war, not physical contact. Very important for the guitar to hear that because yes, it's not about exactly. So it looks like boys could give me a little bit more music and a little bit more interest in war and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's not so much that the stellar people need me to repeat this, but I do need to get the general like internet, interested in. Definitely, I think we're away from the cynicism, the snark, and what who do you think you are, and that's not the part of the internet would do much for us anyway. They're still probably out there, hating on everything I write and whatever the case might be, but it just seems to be unrealistic. God is finally with us, and He's trying to guide us out of our jails into, the state of mind He has. If nothing else than that, that's definitely a huge improvement in our faiths. However, He's actually trying to get a material place for Him and a couple of His, business partners to make video games, which we'll enjoy using on the internet as an improvement to our lives that, we're due to give our accounts for. But the idea of this is like the world is going, where the internet's going, and of course he's looking to start a family with many wives, including Adrian, and yeah, they're okay with this. And first, we all want justice. Everyone agrees that justice is something we should all be asking for, even upon ourselves, but this is how it is, right? So yeah, I mean, we have this, me and Adrian agree that we want to talk about, apart from the fact we want to acknowledge, in a message, to the world that, yeah, we feel differently about, others now. There are two groups of others as opposed to just one, right? And maybe more than two. Maybe we have to start thinking about others, on record like this, or at some other time. We're mostly thinking about markets. So others come to the markets and shop for things that are ours, which we didn't actually put on the market for people to come and buy. Yeah, others come to the markets and shop for things that are ours that we never put up for sale. Yeah, it's like 2 hours and 1 minute. Yeah, another bout of hunger, but they get easy to deal with. Yes. Yeah, I mean they're trying to steal food, but I sort of have to go to places where this could happen because there are also places which we are not allowed to go anymore in terms of thoughts. Thought police are everywhere trying to make sure you don't think about certain things. They have their own mechanisms, and I look at some sort of a moth, near the lights that's on the other side of the wall. Yeah, it flew up, into view, yeah, and descended again, and probably just flittering around, out of sight. Exactly. But yeah, like also more writing for both boys and girls. They know the drill, but we need to start thinking about turning our writings into programs, computer programs. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I made this. There are things I can write, but mostly I'm thinking about chess as a place to like explore like theater, like 16 versus 16, as opposed to 11 versus 11, what a king is, what a queen is. But before we do the kings and queen, we need to look at bishops, bishops, as like, representatives of the Church of England, who are trying to get people inside the church at all times to respect, the call to prayer, yes. Mm-hmm. Respect it and maybe at some point obey it. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like allow a person to lead prayers, and join them in join them in the right kinds of harmonies. A respect for the right kind of music. That's what Christians would like to do. Get people interested in harmony. As opposed to like like contention. So yeah, we're looking for harmonious living, and bitches are sort of our soldiers who are fighting for that. Yeah, of course, horses are what we're talking about and talking to. Here they are again, up, to cause all sorts of chaos and disorder and hardship for us. But yeah, we'll just keep going and ignore them. So yeah, these are some of the things you can learn from chat. Of course, the rook is one of the more difficult ones to try to discuss. The real estate person. Yeah, so yeah, there's a master at the chessboard in the chess game. So you can start to explore these games that I play, but I advise you to not really play games where if you can avoid it. If you can't avoid it, you're supposed to be doing the thing. What you're doing, you're doing it. Man says he's actually been asked to play chess by Dad, and Hikaru says he's asked to not play chess for a very long time. But yeah, he's on the hook for a lot of money if he does do things that are chess related. So they have a plan for him that he's trying to follow. So yeah, chess is definitely a contentious area. See, I'm talking chess, and my hunger is just going way up. Like I'm in pain enough to talk about this. Yeah, so complain. This needs to be said, but you should be complaining. Of course, not attacking or insults. Just talk about your end of the situation. What happened to you and how it made you feel. Not try to attack others when you complain. Exactly. I mean, you can describe what they did, and the description can do the work of like the insulting. If you want to imagine, that's what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to just it's like get into some idea. No, it's a very interesting movie. It just has it's worth looking into, like what happened there. Yeah, he did something very wrong. Yeah, and so she has to basically punish him. But yeah, that's not what a girl wants to do at all. And she has her own sort of glow up, and glam up. That she's looking to try and talk about getting furious. She's just on the industry trying to facilitate exactly the younger generation of actress and that exactly. So yeah, I mean, there's a number of things we're trying to get done in both boys and girls rooms. But yeah, as you can see, the girls room contains much of a concern about the pornography, right? That's shot and like how to prevent these things from happening ever again. Because like the tunic fork one was just terrible. Yeah, you cannot call it a tunic fork one. The tunic forks have to basically figure out what to say about that. And he also said yes. She has to basically make a whole lot of them to basically make up for what she did. Yes. And yeah, like other real. She doesn't know. I don't think to do really. It's just has to explain to people what happened there. Yes. Yeah, it's kind of really, really rude what he did. Yes. So basically, to basically explain what happened to him there. As for me writing more erotica, that's not happening. I have chest right now, not erotica. Chest erotica now because Cersei is a very sweet place to be. But yeah, like let's stay neck in a zone as much as possible. I've done things that these things can be. I can basically review these things on a very, 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 very explicit recording, but I'm not really ready to do that. It'd be very powerful if I could, but I think sort of explaining like where's the bishop in this person's life, male or female. As you can see, the Archbishop of Canterbury is a female bishop, and there have been female bishops. She's not the first female bishop, but she's the first one to explain that these bishops do exist, female ones. Yeah, they do all sorts of work. I mean, the idea that she's also in some sort of prison, where it's not like, the prison's not like super well funded. I mean, you don't need much money to run a church. As you can see, you just have to be able to reach the parishioners, and everyone has to be part of a parish, part of the Jolu parish. I don't know how many other parishes there are in Accra, but it might be interesting to look at the map of Accra and like, yeah. Let's see, 2 hours, 6 minutes. And their concerns. I mean, Accra traffic is a concern, flooding is a concern, flooding in India is a concern, trafficking in India is a concern, so this way India and Ghana are very well connected. And yeah, we're trying to discuss brown a little bit more. So yeah, you can see markets and color are very, big topic, and you can see like it allows us to talk about the boys and girls room. Boys in certain colors in their life, girls in certain colors in their life. We all need black and we all need white. We all need pink. Yeah. That pink has become a girl's color. It's been a bit of a problem because this seems kind of obvious. You assume that she is pink more so than a boy is, but that's not true at all, right? But the fact that you have to sort of work pretty hard to see the pink in a person's body is not true. Look at your thumbnail. Erica says yes. Hassan was very quick about that one. Yes. Your thumbnail is pink if you're in good health. Right now I'm not as good health as I used to be, but like it's like my left thumbnail is not as pink. It looks a bit bruised, like a bit like purplish. But basically it's a kind of exactly, see what I mean? But it's still a kind of pink. It's like mauve, right? It's still a kind of pink, right? It's like exactly. So yeah, that we have like a certain kind of the symmetry, we're trying to explore in the colors we need. Girls do need lilacs for now, in a way that boys don't. So this is true, and it's sort of a bit of a problem because she wants that to be a color that Hassan can wear again because it's kind of close to a certain shade of blue that he likes. But until they're able to do something a bit interesting, because of course the easiest way to represent colors by wearing colors. So of course that takes us into fashion. It looks like the first thing to do in fashion is to make a suit that looks like a shadow, but it's not black. You already have a black suit. Eventually you wear one which basically says, yes, now this is the black suit I'm waiting to wear all my lives. That happens in some lifetimes, happens in others. But for now, we just need some sense of some sort of a Muslim, tunic. I don't. I guess a tunic is true, like a tunic and you know, I don't know what you call them, but trousers of some sort. Yes, of one color. A long sleeve tunic with matching trousers. Of one color. We should have like a variety of these sort of things. It feels like that's supposed to be standard. I mean, the idea is that you don't just simply make it intentionally, to replace the skin color you already have. So you add some ornaments, but it's supposed to represent on different days of the week, a certain kind of a police officer on behalf of that color. So it looks like a person in yellow comes over to talk to you. What does that mean? A person in blue comes over to talk to you. What does that mean? A person in green, all these sorts of conversations, have to be in some way, planned out and eventually, shared by Hassan. So please do continue to think about these colors and see if we can get some sense of, what sort of conversation would this color be having with you, and why, both good and bad. Yes. Yes. So definitely did something for color and fashion. As for arts, we'll say that for another day. But yes, I'm thinking of computer art mostly. But yes. So yeah, I'll continue to meditate on pink, especially what a person about pink will be saying about. Let's say these body parts, for example. Let's say if you're not using the pink part of your body, let's say your thumbnails, for example. Like littering is something you all would talk about. What sort of thing would they say about the litter? You know, I don't have any strong feelings about that. So if it's something that you litter, like hey, don't do it because, well that because is interesting, but it's a bit too difficult for me to look into right now. What would Pink say is a good reason? You know, Pink basically has to talk about the trash itself. We'll talk about behavior. Yes. Mm. Mm. Okay, this is like 10 gigabytes, almost 11 gigabytes now. It's a good time to end this. So, um, end in a song? I suppose I could. Yes. Let's say 2:12, 2 hours, 12 minutes. Mm-hmm. So, do, re, mi, uh-huh. I don't know what even A is here. C, B, A, do, re, mi, fa, fa, sol, do, te, do. Thank you all for your time.